The bakery was filled with the sweet smell of success, a warm, intoxicating cloud of sugar and vanilla that promised happiness. But for a struggling mother named Elena and her little girl, Lily, it was about to become the bitter taste of rejection. Sunlight streamed through the huge glass windows, making the rows of perfect cakes glitter like jewels. There were chocolate towers drizzled with ganache, cheesecakes crowned with shiny cherries, and delicate pastries dusted with powdered sugar. Elena's eyes, however, were fixed on the day-old rack, a small, forgotten corner near the back. When she humbly asked for an expired cake, one she might finally afford for her daughter's birthday, the staff's answer was cold, swift, and loud enough for everyone to hear. It was a casual cruelty that hung in the air, thick with judgment. But what the cashier and the manager didn't realize, what no one in that rich bakery could have possibly known, was that their every word was being heard by the wealthiest and most private man in the city. Elena's trip to the Gilded Crust Bakery had been a desperate one. Just 6 months earlier, her life was a world away from this quiet humiliation. She'd had a loving husband, a comfortable home, and a part-time job that let her be there when Lily got home from school. Then a sudden illness took her husband, and with him, the foundation of their world. Medical bills piled up, her savings vanished, and her job was downsized, leaving her lost and uncertain. Now, every single day was a battle for rent, for groceries, for the quiet dignity that poverty tries so hard to steal. She had patched the hole in Lily's only pair of shoes with cardboard and glue. She wore a thin coat that did little to stop the city's biting wind, a coat with a tear in the sleeves she tried to hide with her hand. But today was different. Today was Lily's 6th birthday. The night before, as Elena tucked her into bed, Lily whispered her only wish into the dark. "Mommy," she said, her voice small and sleepy, "can I have a birthday cake this year? A real one, with pink frosting?" It was a fracture in Elena's heart. A cake, such a simple part of childhood, yet it felt as out of reach as the moon. But looking at her daughter's trusting face, she made a promise she had no idea how she would keep. "Of course, sweetie," she whispered back, her voice thick with tears she wouldn't let fall. "Mommy will get you the most beautiful cake." That promise pushed her through the morning. It gave her the courage to walk past stores with beautiful dresses she could never buy, past restaurants with warm food she couldn't afford, and finally to the front door of the Gilded Crust. She'd heard it was the best bakery in the city, and she hoped that a place so successful might have something to spare, a mistake, a slightly crooked cake, or one that was a day past its prime. She wasn't asking for a handout, just a chance to keep a promise to her little girl, whose hand she now held and whose eyes were wide with a wonder that both warmed and broke her mother's heart. The Gilded Crust wasn't just a bakery, it was a statement. Its owner had built an image of exclusivity. The floors were polished marble, the light fixtures were shimmering crystal, and even the air seemed filtered to carry only the most refined, buttery scents. It was a place where the city's elite came for their celebration cakes and afternoon treats, a world built on the idea that perfection was the only standard. Presiding over this sweet domain was Clara, the head cashier. Clara had been at the bakery for 10 years, and she saw her job as being the gatekeeper of its prestige. She had a sharp eye for who belonged and who didn't. To Clara, customers were in two groups, the wealthy patrons who proved the bakery's status, and the window shoppers who she believed tarnished its image. When Elena and Lily walked in, Clara sized them up instantly. The worn coat, the child's patched shoes, the hesitant way they moved through the lavish space. They were a smudge on the perfect canvas of her workday. Another cashier, a younger man named Ben, shot them a sympathetic glance, but he knew better than to challenge Clara. She ran the front of the house with an iron fist. She seemed to believe kindness was something you only gave to people who could afford to be there in the first place. Today, Elena and Lily didn't qualify. Tucked away in a leather armchair in the quietest corner sat Arthur Vance. To anyone else, he was completely unremarkable. He wore simple gray trousers, a soft, well-worn sweater, and comfortable shoes. His hair was silver at the temples, and his face was lined with the quiet marks of time. He was reading a real newspaper and sipping a plain black coffee. He could have been a retired professor or a widower passing the time. Anyone. But Arthur Vance wasn't just anyone. He was the invisible hand behind half the city's skyline, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. He hated the spotlight, disliked the flashiness of new money, and found a strange comfort in being anonymous. He came to places like this not to be seen, but to observe, to remember what the real world felt like outside the boardroom. More importantly, he came to remember hunger. Before the skyscrapers and stock portfolios, there was a small, cramped apartment and a single mother who worked 3 jobs. He remembered the sharp, gnawing ache in his stomach. He remembered his own mother, her face etched with a permanent worry, counting out pennies for a loaf of bread. He remembered her pride, a fierce, unbreakable thing that made her refuse charity even when they had nothing. She would ask for day-old bread or bruised fruit, anything that allowed her to feel she was providing, not begging. When he saw Elena and Lily enter the bakery, a forgotten chapter of his own life opened right before his eyes. He saw the mother's desperate hope, a fragile shield against her hardship. He saw the child's pure excitement. He saw the ghosts of his own past, and a familiar ache settled in his chest. He lowered his newspaper just a little, his attention no longer on the stock market, but on the quiet human drama unfolding in front of him. Elena took a deep breath and led Lily to the gleaming glass counter. The smell of sugar was almost overwhelming. Lily pressed her face against the glass, her small finger pointing at a modest cake with a single perfect pink sugar rose. "That one, Mommy," she whispered, her voice full of awe. Elena's heart pounded. She waited as Clara finished with another customer, a woman in expensive jewelry who paid for a single croissant with $100 bill and told her to keep the change. When it was her turn, Elena leaned in, trying to keep her voice down. "Excuse me, I beg of you, I have a strange question. I was just wondering, do you have any cakes that have expired, or maybe some that aren't perfect enough to sell? It's my daughter's 6th birthday today." Clara stopped wiping the counter. She looked at Elena, her eyes traveling from the worn coat down to the scuffed shoes, and a tiny sneer touched her lips. She didn't lean in. Instead, she stood up straight, making sure her voice carried. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "We don't sell expired goods. This is the Gilded Crust, a high-end bakery. We have a reputation to maintain." She then turned to Ben and whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "Can you believe the nerve? People thinking this is some kind of soup kitchen?" The words hit Elena like a slap. A hot flush of shame spread across her face. She felt dozens of eyes on her, feeling the silent judgment of the other customers. Her only instinct was to flee. She quickly pulled Lily back from the counter. "It's okay, sweetie," she murmured to her daughter, who was looking up with confused eyes. "It's okay, we'll just go somewhere else." Lily's face began to crumple. The pure joy that had lit up her face just moments ago was dissolving into the heartbreaking sorrow of a child's disappointment. A single tear rolled down her cheek. That one tear was more than Elena could handle, and as she turned to leave, her eyes welled up. From his corner, Arthur Vance saw all of it. He'd seen the hope, he'd heard the quiet request, and he'd listened to the loud, heartless refusal. He saw the cashier's sneer, the mother's flinch, and the exact moment the light went out in the little girl's eyes. And in that instant, something ignited in him. It wasn't pity, it was a cold, pure rage. A rage at the casual cruelty of a world that had forgotten to be human. He saw his own mother in Elena's face, the same quiet shame, the same fierce love. He saw himself in the little girl, a small boy in a breadline, dreaming of a cake he knew he could never have. The years of wealth just fell away. The boardrooms, the billion-dollar deals, all the layers of insulation he'd built around himself, they vanished. He was that hungry boy again, watching his mother be shamed by someone with a tiny scrap of power. He watched as Elena knelt to wipe her daughter's tears, whispering promises she no longer believed, telling Lily they could just sing happy birthday at home and pretend they had a cake. That was the final straw. The quiet dignity of this mother, even in defeat, was more powerful than all the money in that room. Arthur Vance knew he couldn't let this be the end of the story. He couldn't let it end with a little girl's tears and a mother's broken heart. He carefully folded his newspaper, placed it on the table, and stood up. His movements were slow, unhurried. He wasn't a hero swooping in for dramatic rescue. He was just a man who had decided to act. He walked from his quiet corner toward the main counter, his steps silent on the marble floor. The other patrons, who had been staring at Elena, barely gave him a second look. He was invisible, just another customer, and that's exactly how he wanted it. Clara was already turning to the next person in line, having already dismissed Elena and her daughter. She was flashing her practiced customer service smile, ready to help someone who belonged. Arthur reached the counter, standing not in the line, but right beside where Elena was still trying to guide her crying daughter toward the door. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, a quiet presence. He looked at the vast array of cakes behind the glass, his expression impossible to read. Finally, he cleared his throat. It wasn't loud, but it cut right through the hum of the bakery. Clara's smile faltered, annoyed by the interruption. "I'll be with you in a moment, sir," she said, not even looking at him. "That won't be necessary," Arthur said. His voice was calm, but it had a depth that made her finally turn and really look at him. For the first time, she saw the intelligence in his eyes and the firm resolve in his posture. "I'm ready to order now." Clara's professional smile clicked back on, though she was clearly annoyed. "Of course, sir. What can I get for you today?" Arthur Vance didn't look at her. His gaze moved slowly across the display case. Then his eyes rested on Lily, who was watching him with a tear-streaked, curious face. He gave her a tiny, almost invisible wink before turning back to the cakes. "I'll start with that one," he said, pointing a steady finger at the very same cake Lily had wanted, the one with the single pink sugar rose. "An excellent choice," Clara said, brightly. "Will that be all?" "No," Arthur replied calmly. He pointed to the towering chocolate cake next to it. "I'll have that one as well, and the cheesecake with the cherries, and that lemon tart." His finger moved down the line, one dessert after another. Clara's smile widened. This was a huge sale. "Of course, sir. Is this for a party?" "Something like that," Arthur said. Then he looked directly at Clara. "In fact, I'll take all of them." The words just hung there. Clara's smile froze. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered. "All of them?" "Yes," Arthur confirmed, his voice steady. "Every cake, every pastry, everything in this display case. Box it all up." A hush fell over the bakery. Conversation stopped. Ben, the other cashier, stared with his mouth open. The manager, hearing the strange request, hurried out from the back. Elena stood frozen by the door, watching this bizarre scene, her own sadness forgotten for a moment. Clara was completely flustered. "Sir, that must be thousands of dollars." "I know," Arthur said simply. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he produced a card. It was solid black, sleek and minimalist. It had no name, only a chip. It was an Amex Centurion, the legendary black card, so exclusive most people thought it was a myth. Clara's eyes went wide. Her face turned pale. The manager, who had just arrived, saw the card, and his professional cool instantly dissolved into panicked respect. "Mr. Vance," he exclaimed, his voice trembling, I had no idea you were here. Is everything all right?" Arthur ignored the manager. He took the boxed-up cake with the pink rose from the counter and turned to Elena, who was staring at him, utterly bewildered. He approached her gently. "Excuse me, ma'am," his voice now soft and kind. "I seem to have been a bit overzealous with my order. I have far too much cake now. I was wondering if you and your daughter would do me the honor of taking some of it off my hands, especially this one." He held out the pink cake. "It looks an awful lot like a birthday cake, and I don't think I can eat it all by myself." Elena stared at the cake, then at the man's gentle face, and the tears she'd been fighting finally began to fall. Not tears of shame, but of overwhelming, unbelievable gratitude. Lily looked from her mother to the kind man, and then to the cake, her sorrow miraculously transformed into pure, radiant joy. With the entire bakery watching in stunned silence, Arthur Vance turned back to the staff. He looked past the terrified manager and directly at Clara, who looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. His voice was no longer soft. It was quiet, but it had an immense weight. A cake that is a day old is still a cake. It still holds the promise of a celebration, but a heart that has grown cold is barely human. He let that sink in.
I grew up with nothing. I know what it feels like to be hungry. I know what it feels like to be invisible, and I know what it feels like to watch your mother swallow her pride to ask for a small kindness, only to be met with scorn. He took a step closer to the counter. You're not just selling flour and sugar here, he told them, his gaze sweeping over the entire staff. You're in the business of joy. People come here to celebrate life's best moments, and today you denied that joy to a child on her birthday over a cake you would have thrown in the trash tomorrow. You forgot the entire purpose of your work. The manager started stammering apologies, but Arthur held up a hand. Apologies are meaningless without action. Starting today, this bakery will partner with my foundation. We're going to start a program called the Gilded Slice. For every 50 cakes you sell, this bakery will donate a custom birthday cake to a child in one of the city's shelters. I'll provide the initial funding. Then he looked at Elena. And this program will need someone to run it, someone who knows firsthand what a small act of kindness can mean. He smiled at Elena. Ma'am, I'd like to offer you a job as the director of this new initiative. Your role will be to make sure that no child in this city goes without a cake on their birthday. The bakery was transformed. Clara, her arrogancy gone, stood silently weeping behind the counter, ashamed of her actions. The manager, humbled and grateful, promised to start the program immediately. The rest of the staff looked on, their view of their own jobs forever changed. Elena, holding Lily's hand and a beautiful birthday cake, accepted the job with a voice choked with emotion. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline. It was her dignity restored. It was a future she couldn't have dreamed of just an hour ago. As Arthur's assistant handled the details, loading a van with cakes to be delivered to local shelters that very day, Elena and Lily left the bakery not just with a cake, but with a new life. The story of what happened at the Gilded Crust spread like wildfire, becoming a local legend. The bakery was no longer just known for its expensive treats, but for its heart. The Gilded Slice program was a massive success. People came from all over, happy to know their purchase was helping a child celebrate. The bakery thrived more than ever. Clara was never the same. She started her own tradition. Every evening, she personally delivered any unsold pastries to a nearby homeless shelter, often staying to talk. She learned their names and their stories, and discovered a richness in human connection she never knew she was missing. And Elena flourished. She brought a compassion to the foundation that no one else could have. She became a beacon of hope for countless families, living proof that your circumstances don't define your worth. And Lily grew up knowing that the world, despite its harshness, was also a place of profound and unexpected kindness. If this story touched your heart, and you believe a single act of kindness can change the world, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove compassion is the greatest currency of all. This story isn't just about a rich man buying cakes. It's a powerful lesson about what true wealth really is. Arthur Vance's fortune wasn't in the black card in his wallet. It was in the empathy he held in his heart, empathy forged in the fire of his own past. He didn't just give Elena a job and Lily a cake. He restored a piece of humanity to a place that had forgotten it. He reminded everyone that kindness is not a transaction. It's a declaration of who we are. This is a reminder to never judge people by their appearance, because you have no idea what silent battles they're fighting. Because sometimes, a small act of kindness, a simple moment of seeing another person's humanity, can do more than just save a day. It can change a life forever.